think about, is it selfish? Is it worth it? Is it something?
They said he wouldn't last. Too dyslexic, too impulsive, too different. But from the moment Richard Branson dropped out of school at 16, he wasn't interested in playing by the rules. He wanted to rewrite them. He began underground, literally. From a church crypt, Branson launched Student Magazine, turning it into a backdoor record-selling empire.
So the church commissioners that owned the house came in one day and we'd hidden.
At just 20, he opened his first record shop. A year later, the law caught up. He was fined £70,000 for tax fraud. His parents had to remortgage their home to bail him out. In May of 1972, he launched Virgin Records. Its first release, Tubular Bells, was a multi-million seller. Then came the Sex Pistols. In a world of suits and censorship, Branson embraced chaos and turned it into gold. Then came Joan, sharp, no nonsense, grounding. She refused to move in unless he built a proper home. She wasn't just his partner, she was his anchor. In November 1978, at age 28, he bought Necker Island on a whim to impress Joan. No power, no buildings, just vision. It would become their refuge, and one day his last line of defense. Branson's empire left the ground, literally. Virgin Atlantic was born, and the world's biggest airlines started sweating. Slicker service, flashier branding, and a founder who dared to challenge British Airways head-on. British Airways didn't just fight, they cheated. In January 1993, Branson won a libel battle over British Airways' smear campaign. He shared the payout with his staff. His rebellion wasn't just personal, it was cultural. He chased world records across oceans and narrowly survived. He took on Coca-Cola with Virgin Cola and lost. But for Branson, the thrill was in the leap, not the landing. By the end of the 90s, the Virgin name was everywhere. Fitness, telecoms, airlines, even bridal shops. He didn't build a brand, he built an idea. That business could be bold, irreverent, human. But what happens when risk isn't a thrill, but the only way to survive? In March of 2020, the virus grounded the world, and with it, Virgin's lifeblood, travel. Virgin Atlantic bled cash. Hotels, gyms, cruises, all shuttered. The empire was running on fumes. Branson asked the UK government for help, a £500 million loan. The public exploded. Critics pointed to Necker Island, to his tax exile status. "Sell your island first," they cried. So he did. In April 2020, he offered Necker as collateral. "I'll raise as much money as possible against the island to save as many jobs as possible," he wrote. But the UK refused the bailout. Virgin would have to save itself or die. Virgin Australia collapsed. Virgin Atlantic cut over 3,000 jobs, closed its Gatwick hub. Branson injected $250 million of his own money to keep the group afloat. But it wasn't enough. Necker, once a symbol of luxury, now stood as collateral, mortgaged to banks, wind-battered and empty. The empire's crown jewel had become its lifeline. Then came Virgin Orbit's catastrophe. Its first UK launch, years in the making, failed in January 2023. No funding, no future. The company filed for bankruptcy 3 months later. Virgin Hyperloop laid off half its staff. No more passengers, just cargo. Another dream postponed, another bet folded. He was no longer the lovable daredevil. He was a billionaire asking taxpayers for favors. The media turned. Even longtime fans questioned his legacy. By late 2020, Virgin Atlantic was weeks from collapse. The question wasn't, can Branson save Virgin? It was, can anyone? By mid-2023, something rare happened. Virgin Atlantic returned to profit. For the first time since 2016, the airline was flying in the black, not red. To celebrate 40 years of Virgin Atlantic, Branson surprised two longtime crew members by officiating their vow renewal in full Elvis regalia. It wasn't just a stunt, it was a message. Virgin was back and still had heart. 2 years after his historic spaceflight, Virgin Galactic finally opened for business. In June 2023, the first paying customers, 3 Italian researchers, blasted into suborbital space. The dream delayed was finally delivered. Virgin voyages, once nearly sunk by the pandemic, sailed into profitability. Scarlet Lady, Valiant Lady, and Resilient Lady became floating sanctuaries for the young, the bold, the child-free. Behind the scenes, Branson was stepping back. No more daily calls, no more launch stage headlines. His empire now had new captains, but his flag still flew on every ship. Virgin was recovering, slowly, cautiously, but public perception hadn't caught up. The media wasn't cheering. The world had moved on, and so had Branson. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. The new frontier wasn't space. It was time. Time to reflect, to restructure, time to make peace with what came next. He'd beaten the odds, again, but some storms even the boldest can't outrun. In the final months of 2025, Richard Branson wasn't talking business. He was urging the world to listen, to science, to Earth, to the future. With the planetary guardians, he warned that humanity had already broken 7 of 9 ecological boundaries. The rebel billionaire was evolving into something else, a climate elder. His fortune wasn't what it once was. Virgin Orbit was gone. Virgin Galactic struggled. His net worth dropped to around $3 billion, nearly half its peak. But for Branson, this wasn't a crisis. It was a shift. He had built wealth. Now he was building meaning. He didn't wait for a health scare or a scandal. Branson had long prepared Virgin's future. Holly and Sam, his children, were ready to lead. The empire wasn't ending. It was evolving, and he was ready to hand over the controls. He still showed up, still pushed for ideas that mattered. But the man who once kite-surfed in tuxedos now moved differently. Quieter, more deliberate. Legacy was no longer about expansion. It was about impact. Then, everything stopped. On November 25th, 2025, Joan Templeman passed away. Richard's partner for 50 years was gone. She wasn't a co-founder, a board member, or a brand. She was his center. He said it himself, directly, simply, and with more weight than any business statement ever carried. The world responded in kind. Headlines didn't lead with Virgin. They led with Joan. She had been there since the beginning, on a houseboat through tax raids, record launches, and space flights. She didn't want fame, but her presence shaped every decision he ever made. He had outlived rivals, recessions, and failed rockets. But this was different. This wasn't about rebuilding. This was about remembering. And as the sea whispered through their island, Richard Branson stood alone for the first time in a very long time. Every empire begins with a blank page. Richard Branson filled his with hot air balloons, record deals, rocket launches, and the name Virgin written in red. But the final chapters, they're quieter, slower, and maybe more important. Virgin isn't just a company anymore. It's a mindset, one built on audacity, playfulness, risk, and heart, and though its founder is fading from the front lines, his fingerprints remain on everything. The fortune shrank, but the impact grew. He left behind more than businesses. He left behind ideas on how to live boldly, fail loudly, and keep pushing anyway. Richard Branson never stayed grounded, not in business, not in spirit, not even in grief. His journey now is not upward, but inward, not louder, but lasting. Some build wealth, some build legacies. He built both, and he did it the Virgin way.